Hello, welcome to my channel. My name's Alex, and the topic of my short video today is about Shakespeare and one of his most famous soliloquies from the play Hamlet. Now, I know that Shakespeare, most of you don't care about Shakespeare and you think it's lame and boring and stuff like that. But I'm going to keep this video interesting and I'm going to make it concise and to the point. I think that everyone should study a little bit of Shakespeare. It's really beautiful stuff, and obviously it's a little complex and not for everyone, but in your intellectual portfolio, if you're not well read in the arts, you should study some of Shakespeare's best work, at least his most famous stuff, and just have it. Because I view the intellect like I would view a financial portfolio. You want to be as diverse as possible. So if you're someone who has a background in STEM but you didn't study the arts very much, you should try to balance out your own intellect by like if you went to university for STEM, I mean, just learning arts outside of school. And likewise, if you're an artsy person, you should definitely study the hard sciences like physics and everything. So one of the goals of my channel is just to help people become self-built polymaths, so people that are well-rounded and have a lot of knowledge on different things. Because from a much higher, broader perspective, when you become a polymath, everything really is connected, and in ways that you don't see when you're sort of working your way up at the bottom. And so with Shakespeare, really and on my channel, I'm not going to talk about financial advice, although that's a really important aspect of knowledge as well, because I have another channel that I'm working on where I want to interview people and just keep that separate. This channel is more about philosophy, physics, metaphysics, that kind of stuff. Shakespeare, I want to read you guys this soliloquy and then explain to you what it's actually really about, like the existential point it's making, and then open that up to how it will relate to my other videos, like in physics and stuff like that. Because I didn't really truly appreciate this monologue, excuse me, until I was in my 30s, right? And I am someone that's like of an honors English background, so I'd been studying Shakespeare since like my early 20s, but I didn't really appreciate this. So I'm just gonna read it to you guys bluntly and then explain to you what it's saying, and then make a point on that quickly. So this is from the play Hamlet. It's the to be or not to be speech. It's a soliloquy, which means a soliloquy is a monologue that's being delivered by a character to himself, as opposed to a monologue that would be directed at an audience or at another character. So this is basically an internal monologue being expressed out loud by the character. And it's the monologue is about suicide. He's contemplating suicide. But what it's really about, you know what, I'll tell you what it's about, and then I'll read it, and then we'll go over it some more. It's an existential monologue about contemplating suicide and realizing that the uncertainty of what comes after death is so terrifying that killing yourself in this life to get away from whatever your current problems are isn't really a viable solution, because something comes next most likely, and you can't control it. And the fear of that, the deep fear of the unknown is so overpowering that it makes most people cowards, and they might as well just stick around and keep dealing with this. Because and at a deeper level, and this is why I find this truly fascinating, is this was written in the year 1600, okay? With modern quantum physics and also keep it to quantum physics, the universe itself seems to be one large collective dream. This ties into a philosophy called analytic idealism as opposed to materialism, and that's where I'm going with all of this. But the point is, religion, organized religion, and materialist atheism, which a lot of people think are the only, see as a binary of reality, they're both psychologically comforting, because they promise people something that certainty about what comes after death. And when I was younger, I noticed when I was a little boy that a lot of people were religious, and it seemed to me very psychologically obvious on the surface that they were just afraid of death, and the comfortness of religion was just their way of dealing with it. And I can relate to that, because I've always not wanted to die, and I like life ever since. I've had this survival instinct since I was very little, and so for me, religion when I was very young was comforting, right? As opposed to the notion of you just die and existence stops and that's it. What I came to realize, because that other people that are material atheists that I've never really resonated with completely, they actually are comforted by this notion, because it lets them off the hook for their behavior. And as I've aged now, I've watched my peers, a lot of them go down certain life paths where they make bad decisions, and they essentially, the idea that there's no consequence to anything is psychologically comforting, and that's why they're so so psychologically dedicated to materialist atheism. I'm of the perspective that both organized religion and materialist atheism are not, like, I've evolved beyond them. And religion is not something that can be proven or disproven because it's a lot more about psychology, but materialist atheism, materialism as a scientific paradigm, can be invalidated, and it has, which puts us back into more of an agnostic state of idealism. And I'll make another video where I argue that there's reasons why we should suspect that there's certain things that will happen after death. But for the sake of this video, it's just to say that to be in a state of agnosticism and to admit to yourself that you don't know what happens after death is like, most people can't do that until some people grow strong enough to do that, but it's really hard. And then from there, you can really be honest with yourself if you want to keep growing as a philosopher. So anyway, to keep this to the point, I want to read you this soliloquy and then just elaborate on it quickly, and then this can open you up to starting thinking about physics in a different way. But this is Hamlet's monologue, To Be or Not to Be. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them. To die, to sleep, no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. So what he's saying here is, like, to be or not to be, to live or die, that's the question. So should we just stay here and suffer, or should I do something about this and just end my life? So that's what he's saying so far. To sleep, perchance to dream, aye, there's the rub, for in the sleep of death what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of life long. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of disprized love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes? When he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin means knife, who would these farters bear, to grunt and sweat under a weary life? But that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country, from whose bourne no traveler returns, puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills we have not, than fly to others that we know not of. Thus conscience doth make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sickly o'er with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pith and moment. With this regard their currents turn awry, and lose the name of action. Soft you now, the fair Ophelia, nymph, in thy horizons be all my sins remembered. So there you have it. That's the famous soliloquy. That's like the most important Shakespeare soliloquy that I would recommend you guys study. If you just want to have a little bit of Shakespeare knowledge in your mental catalog that you can bust out at trivia night, study Hamlet, King Lear, and Romeo and Juliet, and then the sonnets. That's the important stuff. And you don't even have to read Hamlet. Just pay attention to the most important, famous bits and in this monologue. So what I'm getting at is the lines, to sleep, perchance to dream, aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, may give us pause. So, if you're a materialist atheist and you really believe that there's an independent reality separate from consciousness, you're pretty comforted by the thought of death just being the end. It lets you off the hook for everything. I personally suspect that the way consciousness works in the universe is that we have these temporary sort of incarnations. I have a monistic model. I shouldn't diverge on that in this video. But for the sake of this, let me just read you two quotes quickly. This is an Einstein quote from the 1930s. Hence it is clear that the space of physics is not, in the last analysis, anything given in nature or independent of human thought. It is a function of our conceptual scheme. That's an Einstein quote. I also wanted a more recent quote from a U of T prof who said, "It will remain remarkable in whatever way our future concepts may develop that the very study of the external world led to the scientific conclusion that content of the consciousness is the ultimate universal reality." That was by Eugene P. Wigner, a Nobel Prize winner and one of the leading physicists of the 20th century. That's not the U of T prof. I have another quote from a U of T prof. that I'll find. Actually, I'll save that for the next video, because the next video is on idealistic philosophy. My whole point is this, pardon me. You have to learn to become comfortable with not knowing things psychologically, and opening up your mind to a lot of exploring spaces that are uncomfortable when you're trying to grow, because materialism is a paradigm that I think can be invalidated with science, and has been. And so, like I said, we have to start to think about how we behave in this reality frame, because this world seems to operate like a collective dream, meaning since we don't control our own dreams or why we're here, we can't really control where we go next, and we probably do go somewhere next. So that's where I'm going with a lot of this train of thoughts. Anyway, I wanted to share that with you today. You should study Shakespeare. I hope you got a little bit out of this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.